They left me to die in the cold, abandoned, forgotten. But years later, when fate turned the tables, I returned, as their landlord. This is my story, of betrayal, survival, and poetic justice. I still remember that night like it happened yesterday. The wind in Chicago was cruel, slicing through my coat like I wasn't meant to survive it. My stepmother, Evelyn, stood by the car, arms folded, her eyes colder than the snow. Beside her, Marcus, my stepbrother, couldn't even look at me. They had just buried my father a week ago. And tonight, they were burying me in a different way. Dad left nothing for you, Daniel, Evelyn said. You're not family. Not anymore. She threw my duffel bag onto the icy ground and got in the car. I begged, not for money, not even for love, just for a chance to stay until morning. Marcus hesitated, but Evelyn barked at him, and he shut the door. As their taillights disappeared into the white storm, the cold wrapped around me like punishment. My fingers went numb, my vision blurred. I collapsed in the snow, whispering through trembling lips, "You'll remember this night." The last thing I saw before darkness swallowed me was my father's house, warm lights glowing through frosted windows. A home that wasn't mine anymore. But fate wasn't finished with me. Not yet. When I woke up, everything was white, walls, sheets, the faint smell of antiseptic. I was in a hospital in Denver, Colorado. A nurse told me a truck driver found me unconscious by the highway, barely alive. His name was Tom Whitmore. Tom came to see me later that day, a big man with kind eyes and oil stains on his hands. "You've been through hell, son," he said, setting a steaming cup of coffee beside me. "But maybe God pulled you out to start fresh." I didn't believe him then. I felt hollow, broke, homeless, abandoned. I had no idea how I'd even cross states. The doctor said hypothermia can make your mind blank out. All I knew was that I was alive when I wasn't supposed to be. When I told Tom everything, he just nodded. Pain can either break you or build you. Choose which. He offered me a job at his small renovation company once I recovered. It wasn't charity, it was a second chance. I promised him I'd make it count. That night, staring at the hospital ceiling, I whispered, "You tried to bury me in the cold. But I'll rise from it." Tom kept his word. He gave me a mattress in his garage and taught me the basics of fixing things: drywall, wiring, plumbing, roofing. At first, I worked just to eat. Then, I started working to forget. Every hammer hit was a release. Every wall I repaired reminded me that broken things can still stand again. Tom never pried into my past, he just showed up every morning with 2 coffees and a quiet, "Let's get to work." I saved every dollar I could. No parties, no dates, no distractions. My coworkers thought I was obsessed. Maybe I was. Because every night, after work, I'd look at pictures of Chicago, the skyline, the neighborhoods, the streets I once walked, and I'd whisper, "One day, I'll go back." But not as a nobody. 3 years later, I had enough saved to rent a tiny apartment and buy an old laptop. I started watching videos about real estate, renovation, and flipping houses. The more I learned, the clearer my path became. Revenge wasn't about hurting them anymore. It was about proving I could rebuild, not just my life, but my destiny. By 30, I'd become more than just a worker. I was a learner, a quiet observer in every construction site. I watched investors come and go, saw how they bought cheap, renovated smart, and sold high. I realized something: I didn't just want to fix houses. I wanted to own them. Tom helped me secure my first property, a beaten-down home on the outskirts of Denver. It smelled of mold and regret. Everyone said it wasn't worth saving. But I saw myself in that house, broken, unwanted, underestimated. I worked day and night. Painted every wall. Fixed every pipe. Slept on the floor. When I finally sold it, I made a profit of $120,000. I didn't celebrate. I just stared at the check in disbelief. That night, I stood outside under the stars and whispered, "Step 1." Tom laughed when I told him I wanted to build a real estate company. "Then build it, son. But never forget where you started. In the cold." I didn't. Because that cold became my fire. 5 years later, I was a quiet success story. My company, Riverstone Renovations, had flipped dozens of homes. Still, I stayed invisible, no social media, no public bragging. I wasn't rich yet, but I was free. Then one evening, as I scrolled through property listings, my heart froze. There it was, my father's old house. The same one Evelyn and Marcus threw me out of. It was up for sale. The photo showed the front porch, still painted in my father's favorite deep green. The caption read, "Foreclosure property. Needs renovation." I laughed. Not out of joy, but disbelief. The house that ended my life was now begging to be saved. I called the realtor that night. "I want to buy it," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Under Riverstone Holdings." When she asked if I'd like to see it first, I smiled faintly. "I already have," I whispered. "In my nightmares." This wasn't just business. This was destiny knocking, and this time, I was answering. 10 years. That's how long it took before I could set foot in Chicago again without shaking. The city hadn't changed much, still cold, still beautiful, still cruel in certain corners. But I had changed. When I stood outside my father's old house, I didn't feel rage anymore, just a quiet, dangerous calm. The paint was chipped, the roof sagged, and the fence I helped him build as a boy was half rotten. But it was still ours. The realtor was polite. "This property has a long history," she said, unlocking the door. If only she knew. I walked through each room like a ghost retracing his steps, the kitchen where my father taught me to fix a loose hinge, the stairs where I fell as a kid, my old bedroom still faintly blue. For a moment, I heard echoes of laughter, his laughter, then silence. When she asked if I was sure I wanted it, I said, "More than anything." And when she slid the papers across the table, I signed with a steady hand. "Whose name should we put on the deed?" she asked. "Riverstone Holdings," I said quietly. I didn't tell her that Riverstone was mine. I didn't tell her that the boy they left to die had just bought their past. The deal closed in less than a week. The house, the one they once threw me out of, was now legally mine. But I didn't move in. Not yet. Instead, I had it fully renovated. Every crack fixed, every faded wall repainted, every cold memory replaced with warmth, on the outside, at least. Inside, I kept the darkness alive. Through the renovation paperwork, I learned something fascinating. Evelyn and Marcus were struggling. They'd gone bankrupt after mismanaging what was left of my father's business. They were renting a small apartment downtown and had been evicted twice. A poetic twist, wasn't it? So, I asked my property manager, Linda, to reach out to them. "Offer them the house for rent," I said casually. She frowned. "You're sure? Family and tenants don't mix well." "They're not family," I replied. "Just people who left a debt unpaid." A week later, she called me. "They've accepted. They're moving in this weekend." I stood by the window of my condo that night, watching the snow fall over the city. Somewhere, they were celebrating a miracle. They just didn't know who sent it. When Evelyn and Marcus moved back into the house, I didn't go near it. I didn't need to. I had cameras installed during the renovation, legal ones for security, but still mine to view. The first time I saw them on the feed, it was strange. Evelyn looked older, tired, thinner. Marcus still had that careless walk, but the arrogance was gone. They stood in the living room, smiling as if they'd found redemption. This place feels like home again, Evelyn said to Marcus. I almost laughed. I watched them repaint my old room, move their boxes in, and light a candle by the window, the same window I had once stared through, begging for warmth. They prayed aloud that night. Evelyn's voice cracked as she said, "Thank you, Lord, for giving us a second chance." I whispered back to the screen, "You're welcome." The irony was delicious. They believed Grace had found them. They didn't realize Grace had a landlord, and it was me. Revenge wasn't going to be loud. It was going to be silent, slow, and unforgettable. Weeks went by, and I became addicted to watching them. Not out of cruelty, but fascination. I wanted to see if guilt had ever haunted them. And it had. Evelyn often sat on the porch, staring into the snow, lost in thought. Marcus avoided the basement, the same basement where my father used to store our old family photos. They didn't talk about me, but I could see it in their faces. My absence had turned into their ghost. I started leaving subtle reminders. A family photo tucked inside a wall vent. My father's old watch, cleaned and placed on the mantel. Evelyn nearly fainted when she found it. "Do you think this house is haunted?" Marcus asked nervously. "Maybe," she said softly. "Or maybe it's trying to tell us something." That night, she couldn't sleep. I know because she checked every lock, every window, whispering to herself like she was confessing to the dark. The past was speaking to her, through me. And I hadn't even begun. After a month, I decided to turn the screws just a little tighter. I mailed the first letter. No name, no return address, just words my father used to say. The cold never forgets. A week later, another letter arrived at their doorstep. Some debts are paid in time. Others, in silence. Evelyn called the property manager, panicked. "We think someone's watching us," she said. Linda reassured her it was probably a prank. But I knew she wouldn't sleep again. Marcus grew jumpy too. He argued with her about moving out, but they couldn't afford it. The house they once owned was now their only option, and it was slowly eating them alive. I wasn't done yet. I sent one last letter, written in my father's handwriting, copied perfectly from an old card I'd kept. "To those who turn away family in winter, beware when the frost returns." Evelyn broke down crying on camera that night. Marcus tore the letter and threw it into the fire. As the flames burned, I whispered through the screen. "You can't burn what's already frozen." By the third month, the tension inside that house was thick enough to taste. I could see it in their movements, the constant arguing, the sleepless pacing, the way Evelyn jumped at every sound. Marcus had lost his job. Their bills were piling up. So when the rent notice arrived, a small increase that I personally approved, they panicked. Evelyn called Linda again, pleading for more time. "Please, ma'am, my son's looking for work. We'll catch up soon." Linda relayed the message to me. I told her to give them an extension, but with a twist, interest. Small enough not to scare them away, big enough to sink them slowly. They signed the new terms without reading them properly. Desperation always blinds. I didn't take joy in it. Not exactly. Watching them fall apart wasn't the victory was knowing they finally understood helplessness. At night, I'd turn off the security feed and sit in silence, thinking about my father. He would have wanted me to forgive them. But forgiveness, I realized, doesn't always mean forgetting. Sometimes, it just means letting people walk the same road they pushed you down, barefoot, in the cold. It started small, things disappearing, doors creaking open. Evelyn blamed the house. Marcus blamed her mind. But I knew it wasn't ghosts. It was memory. During the renovation, I'd left small tokens. Photographs, scribbles, even my old toy car hidden in the attic. Subtle things, harmless things. But when you're guilty, even harmless things feel like judgment. One night, Evelyn found a cracked mirror in the hallway, one that hadn't been there before. Across the crack, a faint message was etched. "You can't hide from reflection." She screamed. Marcus ran in, swore he'd throw the mirror out. But when he touched it, a piece of glass sliced his palm. Blood on the floor. Panic in their voices. Fear in their eyes. I didn't mean for it to happen, but maybe fate wanted to make its point. That night, Evelyn sat alone in the kitchen, praying aloud. "If this is punishment," she whispered, "please, let it end." I watched her through the camera feed, and for a fleeting second, I almost pitied her. Almost. I knew they were nearing their breaking point, so I arranged the next move. Linda called them for a routine landlord meeting downtown, standard policy, she said. They didn't suspect a thing. When I arrived early at the Riverstone office, I asked my assistant to step out. I wanted the moment private. The door opened. Evelyn walked in first, looking older than I remembered. Marcus followed, shoulders tense. "Mr. Rivers?" Evelyn asked nervously. "Is the landlord here?" I turned around slowly. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then she gasped. Her hand went to her mouth. Marcus froze. "Daniel?" Evelyn whispered. "Hello, Evelyn," I said calmly. "Long time no see." The room fell silent. I could almost hear her heartbeat. "You're the landlord?" Marcus stammered. I smiled slightly. "Technically, I'm your landlord's landlord. Riverstone Holdings, that's me." They stood there, pale and trembling, the truth dawning like a sunrise they didn't want to see. I leaned back in my chair. "It's funny, isn't it? The house you threw me out of now belongs to me." For the first time, I saw something in Evelyn's eyes that I'd never seen before. Not hatred. Regret. The silence after my revelation was heavier than the snow that night years ago. Marcus opened his mouth first. "We thought you were dead." "I almost was," I replied softly. "You made sure of that." Evelyn began to cry, quiet, broken sobs that filled the office. I didn't interrupt her. I wanted her to feel every second of it. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "We were scared, desperate. Your father's death wasn't an excuse," I cut in. "You didn't just throw me out. You erased me." Marcus looked down, shaking. "We were wrong." "Wrong is forgetting my birthday," I said coldly. "What you did was cruelty." Evelyn reached for my hand across the table, but I pulled it back. "I'm not here for apologies," I said quietly. "I'm here for rent." She flinched, realizing this wasn't a movie redemption moment. This was real life. And real life bills always come due. As they left the office, Evelyn turned to me, eyes swollen. "Why are you doing this?" I looked her straight in the eyes. "Because you taught me how the cold feels." For a while after that meeting, I couldn't sleep. I told myself it was because of the business, but deep down, it was something else. They begged for mercy, called Linda daily, promising to pay. I could have crushed them completely. But something inside me hesitated. I remembered Tom, the truck driver who saved me. He once said, "Mercy isn't weakness, Daniel. It's control." So I gave them time. I allowed them to catch up on the rent, even reduced the interest quietly. I told myself it wasn't kindness, just strategy. But it was more than that. Evelyn wrote me a letter one evening. Handwritten, shaky. "We deserve everything you're doing to us. But I just want you to know, not a day passes that I don't regret that night." I read it 3 times. Then I folded it neatly and locked it in my desk. Revenge had started to lose its taste. But I couldn't stop. Not yet. There was still one final debt, and fate would decide how it was paid. Mercy only goes so far before life demands closure. Months passed, and they stopped paying again. I waited, maybe out of curiosity, maybe out of hope that guilt would make them responsible. But people rarely change until they have nothing left to lose. I called Linda. Send the eviction notice. She hesitated. You're sure? Completely. 3 days later, Marcus stormed into my office. His face was red with anger, his voice trembling. You can't do this. This was my father's house. I stood up slowly, looking him dead in the eye. No, Marcus. It was my father's house. You just lived there. He clenched his fists. We were desperate, Daniel. We made mistakes, but we didn't kill you. I smirked. You tried. He said nothing. Just stood there, broken, defeated. When he finally left, I stared out the window for a long time. Chicago was quiet that night. Snowflakes drifted against the glass like silent memories. The eviction wasn't about money. It was about balance, the universe collecting what was owed. They'd left me to freeze in the dark. Now it was their turn to feel the chill. When they couldn't pay what they owed, the house went up for auction. I didn't stop it. I watched. Silently. Evelyn looked frail that morning, her hair tied back, her hands shaking as she held the paperwork. Marcus sat beside her, trying to look brave but failing miserably. I attended anonymously through one of my subsidiaries. The bidding was quick, cold, and final. When the gavel dropped, the house sold for half its value, to me. After the auction, they stood outside, speechless. I walked past them without a word. Marcus called after me, his voice cracking, "You win, Daniel. You got everything you wanted." I stopped. Turned around. "No," I said softly. "I got everything you threw away." They didn't answer. They couldn't. Watching them carry their boxes out of that house, the same way I carried my bag into the snow years ago, was the most haunting kind of symmetry. But even then, I didn't smile. Because revenge, when finally achieved, doesn't heal you. It just leaves you quiet. A week after the eviction, I saw them again. By accident. They were sitting at a bus stop downtown, surrounded by 2 suitcases. It was snowing, not heavily, just enough to sting. Evelyn looked sick. Marcus tried to wrap his coat around her shoulders, but the wind cut through both of them. For a second, I saw myself in them, that same helplessness, the same cold. My hands trembled on the steering wheel. I thought about stopping. About offering them a ride, or food, or something. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I parked across the street and watched quietly. The irony was unbearable, the same street where I had once begged for warmth, now held the ones who turned me away. When Marcus finally led his mother onto the bus, I whispered to the empty car. "Now you know what the cold feels like." And as the bus disappeared into the snow, I realized something. This wasn't satisfaction. This was closure's shadow, the moment before forgiveness begins to whisper in your heart, even when you don't want it to. That night, I went home and wrote a letter. Not to Evelyn or Marcus. To my father. "Dad, I did it. I didn't destroy them. I just let life balance itself. You always said character is revealed when no one's watching, and I think I finally understand what you meant." I folded the letter and placed it beside your photo on my shelf. For the first time in years, I didn't feel angry. Just tired. I thought about that boy lying in the snow, half dead and forgotten. And I realized something. He wasn't seeking revenge anymore. He was seeking peace. Revenge had kept me alive. But forgiveness, that's what would let me live. So, I made a decision. I called Tom, the man who saved me, and told him I wanted to do something good with the house. Something meaningful. He just laughed softly and said, "Took you long enough, son." The next month, the house opened again, but not as a rental. This time, it was a youth shelter for abandoned and homeless teens. I named it the Riverstone Home for Second Chances. When the first group of kids arrived, I saw pieces of my past in their faces, lost, scared, forgotten. One boy asked, "Mister, do we have to pay to stay here?" I smiled. "No. You just have to promise me something." "What's that?" he asked. "Never leave anyone out in the cold." That night, I stood in the living room, my father's house, now filled with laughter again. The fireplace crackled, and warmth finally replaced the ghosts. Every Christmas, I light a single candle on the porch. Not for revenge, but remembrance. Because sometimes, justice isn't about making others suffer. It's about healing where they once hurt you. Winter came early that year. Chicago was colder than usual. One night, as I locked up the shelter, a nurse from County General Hospital called. "Mr. Reed," she said softly, "there's a woman here asking for you. Her name is Evelyn." For a long moment, I couldn't breathe. I hadn't heard that name spoken with compassion in years. When I arrived, she was lying in a hospital bed, frail and pale. Time had stripped away the arrogance. She looked smaller, human. Her eyes filled with tears when she saw me. "Daniel." I didn't mean for it to go that far. I was scared. Marcus convinced me. I didn't answer. I just sat beside her. She coughed weakly. "I see your name everywhere now. The Riverstone Home. You became everything your father wanted." I swallowed hard. "And you became the woman he warned me about." She started crying, not loud, just broken sobs. That night, as machines beeped around us, I realized something: her suffering didn't bring me joy. It just made me understand how hollow revenge feels when the fight is already over. A week later, Marcus showed up at the shelter. He looked thinner, humbled, maybe even ashamed. The swagger was gone. In its place was quiet regret. "Daniel," he said softly, "I know I don't deserve to be here. Mom's dying, and I have nothing. No home. No family. Just guilt." The kids in the shelter watched from a distance, sensing the tension. I took him into my office. He sat down, fidgeting with his hands. "I've been clean for 6 months," he said. "Been volunteering at a church downtown. I heard about what you're doing here. You're saving lives, man, lives like mine." For the first time, he didn't sound like the man who left me to die. He sounded like someone trying to live again. I leaned back in my chair. "You want to help?" He nodded. "Please." After a long silence, I said, "Then start by mending what you broke." When he left that night, I saw something in him I never thought I'd see again: remorse. And maybe, hope. Evelyn's condition worsened. Marcus visited her daily. I visited occasionally, not out of duty, but closure. One evening, as snow fell outside her hospital window, she whispered, "Daniel, promise me you won't hate me anymore." "I see him, your father. In my dreams. He says you've already forgiven me." Tears burned my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I reached out and held her trembling hand. "I already did," I whispered. "Long before you asked." She smiled weakly. "Good. Then maybe I can finally rest." That night, she passed away peacefully. Marcus called me from the hospital, crying like a child. When I hung up, I stood by my window at home, watching the snow drift down. The same snow that once buried me was now falling softly. Like forgiveness from the sky. Sometimes the people who hurt you most become your greatest teachers. Evelyn taught me how to survive the cold. And how to never let it live inside me. A year later, the Riverstone home had doubled in size. Marcus worked there full-time now, guiding lost teens, sharing his story with raw honesty. One day, one of the kids asked, "Mr. Marcus, how did you meet Mr. Daniel?" He paused, smiled faintly, and said, "I once left him to die, and he came back to save me." The room went quiet. I watched from the doorway, heart heavy with pride and sorrow. That boy from years ago, frozen, betrayed, forgotten, would have never believed this ending. But here we were. Alive. Healing. Proof that forgiveness doesn't erase justice, it transforms it. I never told Marcus that I still light that candle every winter. Not for Evelyn. Not even for revenge. But for the lesson, that mercy is sometimes the sharpest form of justice. It's been 10 years since that night in the snow. Every Christmas Eve, I return to the old house, now glowing with laughter, warmth, and light. The kids hang stockings, sing carols, and play in the living room that once held only silence. I walk to the porch, light a single candle, and set it beside the door. A little girl tugs my sleeve. "Mr. Daniel, who's the candle for?" I smile. "For everyone who ever felt forgotten." She nods, satisfied, and runs off to join the others. As I stand there, I realize, revenge never truly satisfied me. But rebuilding what they tried to destroy, that became my victory. I didn't come back to punish them. I came back to reclaim the fire they tried to extinguish. And tonight, as the candle flickers in the cold air, I whisper to the wind. I forgive you. And I'm free. Fade out. Snow falls. The light never dies. Sometimes, revenge isn't about destroying the people who hurt you. It's about becoming everything they said you'd never be. If you felt this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true-to-life stories of resilience and poetic justice. Thank you for listening to my story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share my videos. Thank you.